Kim, thank you so much for doing this with me. You are an fashion event producer, and you're also an instructor at a local college. So I want to dive right in with you being in the fashion industry and having had years of experience in it. How did you get started?
Ah, how did I get started? I would probably just go back to my childhood almost. I started out modeling when I was about 14. I auditioned for a fashion show, and the woman in charge of the auditions and things like that, she was a model scout, and I ended up doing modeling when I was 14, and I lived in the Northwest, so I ended up doing some things in Seattle. And then I just kind of I always loved it. Like it was always like a really big part of just kind of who I am. There's even like a baby picture of me at my second or third birthday, and somebody got me like this quilted pink jumper, and I'm like hugging it and so excited. Like clothing is like I remember memories based on what I was wearing, or like I can always pinpoint like a significant time. I literally know what I was wearing. So I think the fashion thing is just part of who I am. Started out with the modeling, and then just really loved the exposure. Like I have memories of like even just certain smells of hairspray. It can put me back to being backstage when I'm like 15 at a show when they were just clouding everyone with Paul Mitchell hairspray, like and the honestly, like the people that I was involved with too as a young child, like I mean, or as a teenager in the fashion industry, I'm the youngest of six, and so my family is like, I'm kind of like a part in a system rather than like I don't know, bigger families. Sometimes you might not get as much focus on the individual, and also both of my parents are very like pragmatic, very simple, style wise, very intelligent, but they never ever put any emphasis on appearance, like at all. And so for me, being around like very creative, deliberately styled people was fascinating to me because like it was like so opposite of anyone that I knew. So I think that kind of started the fashion thing, but actually I just worked intermittently, like when my mom could get me to shows or when she could get me to an audition and things like that. But I went into college doing interior design and marketing. And so I got my bachelor's doing interior design at Utah State in Logan. So like I also love just, you know, the whole concept of like the aesthetics of things, just design concepts. They're the same with your outfit, they're the same with like your
Mhm.
surroundings, your haircut. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just all, that aesthetic planning. So I did my design degree and I started working in that realm. But at the same time, I was kind of simultaneously continuing modeling, as I was doing design. And I started working for like individuals in their homes, and I discovered that I really like to have a vision and just be let go to do my own. And sometimes like if you are like in a more like mid range decorating, decorating home design, things like that, obviously the homeowner will want to be very hands on,
Mhm.
and I think that that's great, but I also think that I probably work better just like being let go. like we want
Yeah.
it to generally look like this, or we really like these things, and I can like touch back with people, but I don't excel at like having someone else manage me. And so I think like that was a really good learning experience. And then I just kept doing the modeling stuff, and then I was in some shows, and got together with some people who we wanted to do more shows. And then my personality is kind of the type that will take the lead or tell people like, oh, you can do it this way or that way. And so I started directing models, casting the models, training the models. So that just kind of like organically became what I was doing. And then I transitioned from doing that into like the broader production of like the entire show, like finding sponsors, finding venues, doing all those things. So it kind of just the fashion end started going like this, and the design end started to dwindle down.
It's moving up,
Yeah,
and you modeled, and so you were part of shows. You were
yeah,
seeing how everything was being put together, all the work that goes involved. I mean, because
yeah,
people don't really
yeah.
know unless you're
Oh,
involved.
yeah,
And so and it also works well with your personality. It
yeah,
sounds like you
yeah,
were like, oh, I can be the leader. I can take charge on that one.
yeah, yeah. I'll do that. It's fine.
Yeah.
I be becoming exposed to the people in the industry, right? So like if you're showing for someone, or you get exposed to the hair and makeup people, the photographers, the production, the designers themselves, other models. And so in just being exposed to people, I have had the opportunity to go out to like larger markets too, and it's almost like doing my own market research, because I've been able to work backstage like in New York and LA and bigger markets. And so it's like I just am kind of a sponge in that sense, that when I am involved in those other productions, I'm like, oh, this works great. That doesn't work very good. Oh, this is good. Oh, I would never do that, and like I've been able to really glean a lot of knowledge from the people that I'm involved with, and it's been really valuable to me, because I've been able to come up in my own mind with like strategic things for different types of events, and I'm able to also, when I have my students, explain to them like, maybe why one method would be good for them to try, and a different method would not be so good. Like I don't teach design students in the sense of like I don't teach them how to design clothing, but once we're in the production realm, then I have to work with the designers, the designing students, and I have to say, like, I know you want a crazy elaborate vision for your hair and makeup for this thing, but because you're in a show with 10 other designers and we don't have 80 models, so everybody, then
Mhm.
we're going to have to do it like in this systematic way. And they're like, oh, I never thought about like,
Right.
and it's just like all of that stuff has been really, kind of fun learning along the way, and like having hair and makeup people alongside me and like teaching things. And I've put on workshops and things like that before too. So it's like, it's just been fun. It's just a fun, like, I really enjoy just the method of like learning what works best.
I mean, you're so much of a sponge. It's
Yeah.
your whole experience that you're just soaking in every opportunity, and now you have this opportunity to where you can teach. But
Yeah.
before I get there, I would love for you to explain for to someone
Yeah.
who I have dabbled in events, and I've, been part of fashion shows and things like that, but I mean, you've done grand scale.
Right.
So give us like the backstage look on what the process is like. How do you build a show?
Right. It's like feast or famine work, right? It's like if you have something coming up, it depends on the deadline and how quickly you'll be doing it. But I mean, I sometimes I'll put together a team and have people help me. It just depends on the scale of it. But I mean, you've got designer communication, you've got venue, you've got sponsors, you've got social media, advertising, photography, hair and makeup teams, model castings, model trainings. And then you're starting to get in the realm of like, okay, now we can start thinking about how we're going to do this. So like all those umbrella pieces have to be like in place. And I mean, for me, like I kind of take on the whole picture first, and then I will start to like plot away at like, okay, when am I doing specific things and how are we laying this out? But yeah, there's just so many. I think a lot of people in any event, any industry, any event, once people start working in events, they're like shocked by like how many details could slip under the rug and like ruin it, right? Like
Mhm.
sound system, lighting, echo in the building, like,
Mhm.
angle of photos, lineup, spacing between models, right? Like, you don't want
Right.
heights of models, right? Because
Mhm.
you get the picture. So it's just, I mean, there's tons. So I usually start out with like, what am I doing? What's the goal? What am I trying to accomplish here? And then I like will go from there, right? Like it just depends.
There's so many moving parts that
Yes,
I don't think that people fully understand
yes.
until you are standing there and watching everything happen.
Yeah, there's also like it depends on like where you're doing it. One of my larger ones that was during a certain film festival, there were all kinds of uh, city regulations, parking permits, when you can and can't drop things off, what route you can drive, where people can be. Like our people couldn't come and pick up the chairs. We had to like brainstorm storing chairs on the roof of the venue for 2 days. Like it's just like there's even more nightmarish things that can
Oh, right.
like
Things
like
that
that
could go wrong.
yeah, that like aren't even necessarily about your event, but it's like there might be like location restrictions, city rules, fire codes, has
Mhm.
all that stuff, egress.
Yeah,
Like,
it's so interesting.
yeah,
With all of this experience that you've had and going through what it's like to run a show,
yeah,
when you one of the things that you teach is the development of a fashion show.
yeah.
So, how do you teach your students?
It's actually like a big learning curve for me to have students for something that is like just kind of innately. I just go about my methods and I don't ever necessarily have to explain them. I just like I just do my thing.
Yeah.
So this year was actually a really big learning experience for me to try and like convey that information. It's difficult kind of for me to like package my knowledge into like a course where it's like available online to consume, or just even like written detail. It's easier for me to just speak and like run people through an experience and be like,
Mhm.
this, we have to take care of this, we're going to do this. So I presented them with concepts. I asked for them to brainstorm venues. I asked for them to as assignments, right? Like to give me their ideas on like what they would do, a concept that they would find interesting and things like that. But then as it got closer, we met at like our chosen venue. And then when we get there, it's like, okay, what's the capacity of this place? What's the layout of this place? How many people can you get in here? Where's the backstage going to be? So as soon as we start in the physical like meetup, then I just go through systematically like, okay, this today we're covering like this space and we need to like think of all these logistics. And they've got, they get notes like, okay, do you have plugins? Do you have lighting? Do you have tables? Where are you getting the tables? Do you have clothing racks? Do you need to ask, just starting to go through just like the rudimentary like basics of all the needs. And then once like some of those are done, then it's like, okay, who are your designers? How many are there? And then we would go meet with the design class and we would speak to them and ask how many looks and ask like what their vision is. It was like, as far as the school one goes, it was like very collaborative with the other students so that they could say like, I designed this collection and I always hoped that it could like be showcased in this way. So,
Mhm.
and there's other options too. Like we talked about how you don't have to just, have a runway running straight through. Like you could do pedestal modeling and um, display stuff, all kinds of different things. So we just discussed that. But as that goes on with the class, it's like, okay, today we're fitting models. Now we need to understand, when you have to share who's walking in what so that they have time to get out of the garment into the next one. And then we talk about like backstage etiquette and styling kits and down to safety pins and deodorant. Like it's like, each little compartment. but yeah, I just that was a new one this year. So we'll see how that class morphs.
Then you also teach styling.
I have styling 1 and 2, and styling 1 is you start out really, really simple with basic, like, design theory and color theory, and, like, we cover, undertone in clothing and, like, how it affects the skin, and we cover fabric makeup so that if somebody becomes a stylist, they won't ruin fabric that they're
Mhm.
trusted with, right? Like, we talk about, like, which things can be steamed, which ones can't, which ones might crumble, whatever, like, design basics and clothing care.
Mhm.
And then we move into, like, self image, celebrity image consulting, body shape. And then we move into period styles so that, like, if somebody becomes a stylist and they're on a job and they're like, hey, please get me reference the 60s, reference this era, that the students have, like, something to reference.
Right.
So that's generally styling 1. Just and, like, we go over, like, things to have on a shoot or backstage at a runway show for a stylist. Like, you need to have your little kit. You need to have, like, nude spare nude thong, nude bra, under
Right.
deodorant that doesn't get on stuff. Sorry. Um, Scissors. Just we go over the kit and things like that. And then styling 2 is, like, more for the students that actually want to be a stylist as their career. Where would you want to be a stylist? Is your goal to be a personal stylist, a celebrity stylist? Even we cover some styling for, like, retail stores and window display, things like that. So, and then they work on developing a portfolio as a stylist in styling too. So yeah, so those classes are actually pretty fun. Like, there's a lot of knowledge that you know ends up being covered. Those are really fun. And like styling 1, I've had people in, like, who are majoring in photography or advertising take that class because they want to just kind of be better and be more able to, like, help their own profession. Like, the I had a few photographers that were in there and they were like, this is so great. We're so happy we did this because it helps them in their own shoots and their own commercial work and things like that. So
I think it's smart that other people take that class.
yeah, yeah, it's really fun. I like, on my first day of class with styling, I like to do this exercise with the students. And one of my design teachers in interior design, I remember doing this and I thought it was, like, really cool. And she said, take out, like, it was either 3 or 5 items, but I'm like, to my students, take out 5 things from your purse and just or your backpack. Just give me 5 items in front of you and place them, compose them in a way that's aesthetically pleasing. Doesn't matter what it is. It could be a pencil, a comb, a compact, these things.
Right.
And so they'll arrange the items. And then what I like to do with them is take those things and now look at them and move them away. When does it stop looking good? And move them together. When is it too close? Like, how does the space,
Right.
negative space, or affect the composition of anything that you're doing? And now remember that when you're creating a photo shoot or a flat lay or a layout or an outfit, right?
Right.
Like, you get too many items here and suddenly it's like your focus is
You're so top heavy.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
Or, like,
know.
you can edit, or if that's what you're doing on purpose, then
Right.
have an idea that that's what you're doing on purpose. Like, you're over accessorizing
That's
as a
okay.
look. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Right. And some people really do just have that natural talent and have an eye. I think I can think of some people in my family who really have an eye
yeah,
for it. Are like, oh my gosh, we could arrange this room 50 different ways and it
yeah,
would look each way because they could make it so balanced.
yeah,
Where
yeah.
maybe I could only do like 10 different ways and then I'd be like, this looks weird. So I like that fashion is such a great industry for people who are creative. What are some cons with being in this industry? What's like super challenging or really frustrating or
Modeling reference or production reference or teaching reference. So I would say fashion in general, modeling. Like if you come that route,
Mhm.
you just need to be very sure of yourself and understand that what you have is unique to you and you can't be threatened or upset by the competitiveness of it all. Fashion production, if you don't have the right personality for it, you could become completely unraveled. I mean, it's just there's so many details and you have to stay composed because you're also dealing with a big team. You're dealing with a huge myriad of people. I think that it's fun. And so it's like I like the variety of people, but like for example, sometimes you have to tell your team of models like lots of basic things because they may not be experienced. So it's like, please don't leave all your water bottles everywhere. Please don't leave your bags everywhere. Please clean up after. Please don't throw the clothing on the ground. Like things like that. So just so many details. So for fashion production, like if you're not aware that like there's so many details and you really have to stay kind of even, if you get easily upset or flustered, it's probably not the realm for you. There's a lot of really wild things that can happen very quickly backstage sometimes. And if you don't just have a real even attitude, it's going to be so stressful for you. So I think that's for production. Teaching, I don't know, I'm still learning on teaching because I've only taught for like, I started teaching styling, I think in 2019.
Okay.
And I started teaching in person and then we went online. And so for me, that's been a learning experience. The online teaching is kind of a struggle for me because I'm not overly administratively. I'm more of concepts. And so that like bogs me down a little bit, but I think some people would really thrive with that. And teaching is really cool if you enjoy seeing somebody get a concept and then do it. That's really cool. So but I could see that teaching might be on the flip side frustrating if somebody's not getting a concept and you're not able to convey it. It could become like frustrating, but and just personality stuff. The thing with teaching that I probably would say for me is I've never had a boss in the
Mhm.
sense that I do, except I do at the college. So that's actually maybe it's not a con, but it's like something I have to adjust to.
Right.
I have to give my people in my department a heads up what I'm doing and like they need to know details and I'm not necessarily used to that because I do my own. And so it's like, oh yeah, I have to fill them in and tell them what I'm doing. But so that's more just like probably normal job stuff for people that aren't self-employed that they're more used to it, but I'm less used to it.
My last question would be, what would your advice be for someone who is looking to do event production?
Event production. Uh, I would say if you can decide on the type of event that you're interested in. I've also done kind of like large scale parties with co-producers before that we do these big productions and there's performers and all this stuff. I would say like kind of hone in on the type of event, like weddings or whatever. And honestly, I just think the best way to do it is to just throw yourself in and get involved and start asking people to do it if you can help. And don't come into it like being like, I can help you for $20 an hour if you da da da. Like, just do it for free for a
Mhm.
bit, like, figure it out, just show up and like absorb it. And then, you know, start asking where, people that have done it, ask where you could start helping them and kind of direct yourself in those directions. Like, what's the most interesting component of I mean, you could go to a larger city where there's lots more going on. And then you could start also honing in on different types of events where there's a lot happening and you could like sample, go
Right.
around and just show up. I think a lot of times people are kind of afraid to ask someone who they know is in a professional position, if they can just show up and watch, or
Mhm.
if they can just help. And a lot of times, if people ask that, the person doing it is like, oh, of course, like,
Right.
sure, like, absolutely. And then they end up, doing the little things where they show up and they start learning it. I have a lot of my students who have ended up helping in my productions, and they are a huge asset to me. They're backstage, and some of them are better at sewing, and they're back there helping the designers fix some little thing really quickly as it needs to go out. Or there's somebody else who's, I've had someone from the college work on video and music, and splicing together songs for the runway and all that kind of stuff. But it's like there's always like an area where people can just show up and say, I have this skill, do you want this skill from me? Like, I could help in this way. Um, I think that's pretty big, actually, for people that want to get involved. Instead of just showing up and saying, I could help with anything, it's so much more helpful to me when I'm working on something if I have someone show up to me and say, I'm really good at X. And
Mhm.
then I'm like, ooh, cool, I could use you on
Mhm.
X. Or like, if somebody's like, I'm great at organizing volunteers, I can help you with that. I'm like, amazing. It's so much faster and easier, and they end up becoming much more involved if they tell me what they're good at. Because if you generally come and say, I can help with anything, then the person who needs the help has so many other things going on. It's like,
Right.
I don't know if I have time to figure out what you might
Might
be
be good
useful.
at what I could teach you, kind of those
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
Right.
Like I may or may not be in the space where I'm like, oh, I think you maybe would be good for this. It's so much easier if they're just like, hey, I'm awesome at this, I would like to help you. And then I'm like, great, come. It's great.
Right. I
So
this is why I wanted to talk to you, because this is all I the point of all of this is just so people don't have to read descriptions, and I think by actually talking to you, especially because 'cause you're in this field,
yeah,
and you want people, you can't really read a description and be like, you know what's going on in this industry.
yeah,
You really have to be hands-on. You have to be thrown into the fire.
yeah,
And hopefully a young person knows enough about themselves where they feel like they might have a few skills with certain things, like maybe they're really good at delegating, and they can
right,
you can give them a task and they can tell the group and they can get that managed, or
yeah,
they're really good with social media or certain things.
right,
But I think it's great that you are talking about how you just want people to like show up, and
yeah,
especially in this kind of role
yeah,
too, because you really have no idea what goes on in events
yeah,
until you're there,
yeah,
and you're back there and you're sweating and there's a lot of adrenaline and it's crazy.
yeah, yeah,
And then you can pick apart, like what you said, there's so many elements that you can
yeah,
pick. Maybe like you love everything, but someone really might only really like putting all the models together and doing the design stuff, or
right,
someone really wants to do uh, the audio visuals or things like that. And I think it's
yeah,
great. This is definitely a hands-on career,
yeah,
and I it's great that you're like really describing it for someone so they would
yeah,
know, okay, this is what to expect, and you know.
yeah. There's a lot to it. Some of my students in the production class, they didn't even know. They just were interested. They didn't know what they were good at until we were in it. And some of them really stood out. Like, wow, you're amazing at quickly helping models change dress, getting them lined up, calling the show. Like, some of them were. It was so fun to watch them because, like, previously in the class, it was like they were kind of just seedlings learning and not sure what they were good at. But then day of, it was like some of them just like boom, boom, boom.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Some were amazing. And then other ones were like really great at like greeting people and ticket taking and concessions and not,
right.
there's
Mhm.
endless
There's a
jobs.
place for everyone, really.
Right.
And
Right.
it kind of made me think, yeah, you don't really know what it's like changing all these people because we don't do it on a regular. So,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know,
And I'm like, if you're uncomfortable with like have to tell my models too, like if you're uncomfortable or you have certain things with like coverage of body, or like if you're a dresser and you're uncomfortable with nudity, like that's also something to consider in advance,
Right.
because if you wait until it's time, it just has to move quickly. So
Right.
it's, yeah, it's a lot of different elements.
A lot of moving parts, but it sounds like
Yeah,
you're really good at it.
thanks.
Thank you, Kim, for doing this with me and describing your job and enlightening me.
For sure. Yeah, thanks for asking. It's really fun. Sorry I have such a, you're like, what do you do? I'm like, well,
Everything.
this, this,
No, this is
this.
great. This is what it is. So I think it's spot on.